Hello, and welcome to Beyond Biotech, the weekly podcast from Labiotech. I'm Dylan Kissane, and this is episode 142 for the podcast. This week, I had the chance to talk to Fabian Gerlinghaus, co-founder and CEO of Cellares. Cellares is on the cutting edge when it comes to manufacturing cells for therapeutics, and their Cell Shuttle and smart factory technologies are helping top pharma companies and biotech innovators get cells to patients faster than ever. I hope you enjoy this chat with Fabian, where we dive into everything from how his background in aeronautical engineering helped him identify bottlenecks in biomanufacturing, to how cell manufacturers are using robotics to drive up both quality and yield. Okay, so Fabian, welcome to Beyond Biotech. You didn't actually start off working in biotech, right? You trained as an aerospace engineer over in Munich, and then sort of made the transition to biotech. Tell me about that. What took you from aerospace into the world of biotech?
Yeah, Dylan, that's right. I'm an aerospace engineer by training, turned life science tools inventor, turned entrepreneur and businessman. I've always known I wanted to start a company, and I've always been fascinated with technology. And ultimately, starting a company in the life sciences producing life-saving medicines is extremely purposeful work, and that's what motivated the change.
And you talk about this purpose there. Was there a particular moment when you decided, I'm going to start my company in this domain rather than something else in the entrepreneurial space?
I think it's always a combination of, having an intention. My intention was certainly to make a positive contribution to the world, and then also finding a big, meaningful, and unsolved problem. And I happened to I happened to stumble across a very, very meaningful, big problem in 2017, 2018, attending a lot of cell therapy conferences. And scientists at these conferences were shouting from the rooftops, "We've got cures for cancer, and we have no way of manufacturing these living cell therapies that can cure cancer at commercial scale and in a cost-efficient way." So that was kind of the watershed moment where I understood, this is a big, meaningful problem, and here's an opportunity to develop the right technology to save the lives of millions of people.
So I guess that was where Cellares came from. But Cellares wasn't the first entrepreneurial activity for you. You were a chief innovation officer before. Was it at Synthego? And you invented or co-invented RNA synthesizer technology there. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience and how maybe you took something from there and brought it over to Cellares?
I learned a lot from being at Synthego. I joined when we were 5 people in the garage. I helped grow the company from 5 people to 240 people over 5.5 years. So I learned a lot about company building, and co-invented Synthego's RNA synthesizer technology, then started up a new research department that was working on tools and technologies for traditional bioprocessing. How do you make monoclonal antibodies faster, better, cheaper, that kind of a thing. And learned a lot about inventing bioprocessing technologies, architecting bioprocessing technologies, recruiting, team building, company building. So I will say that the years at Synthego were my dojo, where I went to train and learn, and ultimately those years really prepared me for starting Cellares.
And of course, you can bring that experience in building teams there. If you're building from 5 people to more than 200, you can bring that to Cellares. Are you able to apply those sort of lessons? Is that a daily thing for you there?
Oh, yeah. Many lessons. I think from the very beginning, we had a dogged determination to hire the best of the best in all the respective industries and fields. Cellares is an incredibly multidisciplinary company. There's 5 different engineering disciplines, many cell therapy scientists. There's so many different teams and disciplines working together under one roof. So finding the best talent, the top 5 to 10 percentile within each craft and discipline was absolutely key. The other key thing was having a strong set of values and being very intentional about corporate company culture from the very, very beginning. And I think one key value that we've been emphasizing from the beginning is collaboration. Um, a lot of the power of Cellares comes from the fact that we've got all of these different disciplines working together that are normally siloed away in different departments in different companies. And at Cellares, all of these different disciplines are working together closely under the same roof. And collaboration, communication is key.
You talk about collaboration, but Cellares itself is a collaboration. You had a couple of co-founders come together with you to launch this company, right?
Yeah, that's right. I started the company with Omar Kurdi, my co-founder and president. Omar ran a $200 million business unit at Thermo Fisher Scientific, making certified medical devices, mass spectrometers. Then he ran operations at Finesse. Finesse was making 2,000-liter single-use bioreactors for pretty much every pharma company in the industry until they got bought by Thermo Fisher. And then Omar ran operations at Synthego. So I was the R&D leader at Synthego, and Omar was the operations leader. So many, many nights where we worked oftentimes until 5 a.m. in the morning together. And you get to learn a lot about somebody else. You get to build a lot of trust. And if you work such long hours together. So Omar and I get to know each other at Synthego and built a very strong relationship, a lot of trust, a lot of love.
And you've come all together then into this world of cell therapies. I want to understand a little bit about the problem that you're solving here. One way we talk about cell therapies being living drugs with this huge potential. You talked about curing cancers and addressing problems in oncology there, but yet patients are still waiting for them, and it's really hard to do at-scale manufacturing. Where are the bottlenecks? What are the sorts of things you're addressing with Cellares?
Yeah, so cell therapy is cell therapy is a personalized medicine. So every dose is manufactured for each patient individually, and today this is done with manual methods, benchtop equipment that handle one unit operation for one patient at a time, and tons of manual labor. So this is what makes cell therapies so expensive and impossible to manufacture at commercial scale in the tens and hundreds of thousands of patient doses per year.
And I guess when I was looking over your materials and looking over your website, some of the things that kept coming up were your problems of scale, problems of cost. Like you say, it's incredibly expensive. Reliability when you're actually manufacturing those cells. Is there one of these that stands out as the biggest problem or the biggest bottleneck to actually making this a more mainstream therapy?
I will say the two biggest challenges are related and equally important. And if you solve one, you kind of solve the other. Cell manufacturing in its current form is unscalable and it's not cost efficient. So we really need to solve both of these problems to make cell therapy sustainable as an industry in the long run.
And your solution, this is the Cell Shuttle. Can you tell me a little bit about that and introduce exactly what it is and how it works?
Yeah, the Cell Shuttle fully automates the entire cell manufacturing process from start to finish. So where other instruments on the market handle one or two of the manufacturing steps, the Cell Shuttle actually handles all of the manufacturing steps. So it's a big step forward in terms of the degree of automation. That's one dimension here. The second dimension is the Cell Shuttle handles 16 patient doses being manufactured concurrently at the same time. And that is 16 times higher throughput than any other instrument on the market. All the instruments on the market today handle one patient at a time, and the Cell Shuttle handles 16 times more. So a big step forward in terms of the degree of automation, a big step forward in terms of the throughput, the parallelism, and both of these things together give us a very, very scalable platform that allows us to produce 10 times more cell therapies with the same number of employees and the same facility size at about half the price.
Wow, I mean, this is great for the pharma companies that you're working with, and the healthcare industry, the biopharma industry as well. But it's also really good for patients. I mean, you should be able to see wait lists. Are we expecting them to move 16 times faster?
I would say we're, how do I answer this? The technology that we're building is going to put us into a position to meet the total patient demand for cell therapies globally. So where today we see patients dying on the wait list. Stat actually wrote an article about this a few years ago. They wrote about the CAR T patient treatment crisis, where patients are dying on the wait list, even though they're eligible for FDA-approved cell therapies that are on the market. And the oncologists at the treatment centers get a certain number of manufacturing slots assigned to them. They have more patients than that, and then it's up to the oncologists to decide who gets to live and who gets to die. So that this is what our advisor and cell therapy pioneer, Professor Dr. Carl June from the University of Pennsylvania, has called a medical emergency. And what the throughput of the Cell Shuttle and the high degree of automation of our manufacturing platforms allow us to do is ultimately meet the total patient demand for cell therapies globally, so that we can meet the entire patient demand and make it so that no patient has to die on the waitlist.
You said as well, it's also a cost saving, or a big cost saving there as well. What is it specifically that makes the cost so much more affordable with the Cell Shuttle?
Yeah, if you think about the primary drivers of cost in cell therapy manufacturing, it's labor and facilities overhead, followed by materials. And we have not just the Cell Shuttle, we also have the Cell Queue. The Cell Shuttle automates manufacturing. The Cell Queue automates quality control. In my book, both of these technologies are equally important. You really need to have high throughput through the entire drug manufacturing pipeline. It doesn't serve you if you just have high throughput in upstream manufacturing, but then you're bottlenecked with manual labor and downstream quality control. Both of these technologies together reduce labor by about 90%. So we can produce the same number of cell therapies with 10% of the people, or put differently, with the same number of employees, we can produce 10 times more cell therapies. At the same time, a 90% reduction in the number of employees leads to dramatic cost savings. And on the second side of the equation, both of these technologies are very compact. The Cell Shuttle is a big machine. It's roughly the size of a big conference room, about 9 feet tall, but it is functionally equivalent to about 100 benchtop instruments. Put 100 benchtop instruments on 100 benches with enough space for human operators to walk around and operate these machines, and you're going to take up 10 times more facility space. And this is what allows us to produce 10 times more cell therapies with the same amount of facility space. So where it would take other companies 20 facilities, each the size of 4 football fields, to produce 150,000 patient doses per year, we bring that down from 20 facilities to 2 facilities. That reduces the capex from billions and billions and billions of dollars into the hundreds of millions of dollars. That ultimately reduces cost. So to put it succinctly, Cell Shuttle technology and Cell Queue technologies, both of these platforms together reduce the number of employees we need by 90% and the facility space that we need by 90%. And that impacts both scalability and also allows us to reduce the batch price by about 50% compared to what conventional CDMOs would be charging.
That's great for pharma companies. It's certainly going to make it a more sustainable therapy for them to be investing in for their capital expenditure. What about for patients? Can we expect that the end price for the therapies is also going to be reduced thanks to a technology like this?
I will say this isn't really up to Cellares, right? We're helping the pharma companies manufacture for a lower price point. And then long term, it's a negotiation between the pharma companies and the payers, the insurances, to align on the ultimate price point of the actual cell therapy that insurers are reimbursing. I think much like any technology, over the coming decades, the price points are going to come down. I think it's going to be similar as the development of cell phones. Early on, cell phones were prohibitively expensive, and only the very rich had a cell phone in their high-end luxury car. And over time, cell phones became democratized, where today cell phones are accessible and affordable for everyone.
I guess beyond costs then, and certainly when it comes to the cost to the patient, that is something that's out of your hands. But besides the cost, there are other ways that the Cell Shuttle is making a difference when it comes to contamination, when it comes to operator error, human error involved in the manufacturing process. This is a way to avoid some of that as well, right?
Well, what we're seeing in the industry today are process failure rates that are sky high. We're hearing about process failure rates up to 30, 40% in some cases. And how are you going to run a business if you've got a process failure rate of 30 to 40%? So if you do an analysis of the primary sources of process failures, it really comes down to contamination and operator error. And operator error, we're mitigating through fully automating the entire process. Contamination, we're mitigating by fully closing the process. So the key innovation that Cellares came up with is a fully closed consumable cartridge that is effectively 5 different technologies in one. Centrifuge, magnetic cell sorter, electroporator, bioreactor, and sterile transfer technology. All of these technologies are normally benchtop equipment made by different vendors and then operated individually by a lot of human operators. And what we've done at Cellares is we've built a cartridge that is fully integrated, contains all of the manufacturing technologies that are required to run the entire cell manufacturing process in a fully automated fashion in a closed tubing set. So there's no open transfers of the patient's cells required from one instrument to the other instrument. And those are the steps where typically you're vulnerable to contamination. So we've done an analysis and predict that we'll be reducing process failure rates by about 75% through these two things: mitigating operator error through automation and mitigating process failure due to contamination by fully closing the process.
I mean, this platform that you've built, it's not the only automated platform out there. There's, I think, Sartorius has one as well. What differentiates you? Is it the fact that it's working on 16 at once instead of just one? Is it the fact that it's all in one? Is there a quality control measure in there that sets you apart?
The throughput is the primary differentiating factor. The ability to run 16 times more cell therapies in parallel on the same instrument. The other differentiating factor is the degree to which we've automated the manufacturing process. The vast majority of other cell therapy manufacturing equipment vendors out there are building benchtop equipment that handles 1 or 2, maybe 3 unit operations, but they're not actually automating the entire process. A lot of them claim end-to-end automation, but then if you look under the hood, there's usually a few unit operations missing that we've automated on the Cell Shuttle.
Okay. You mentioned just before about this total patient demand globally and being able to address that total patient demand. What does it actually look like in terms of success for Cellares in the years, the decades ahead, in terms of the lives impacted? And I recall as well, right at the beginning, you said you wanted to have this impact on the world. What does that look like in terms of patient lives?
What it means for patients is that we're going to meet the total patient demand for cell therapies globally and make it so that no patients have to die on the wait list ever, but all the patients can get access to the cell therapies. And we're no longer supply constrained as an industry. We're no longer suffering from a cell therapy manufacturing bottleneck that costs lives today. And from a Cellares perspective, I foresee that Cellares is going to be the de facto standard for cell therapy manufacturing across the globe. And like I said, we're going to help create a world where no patients are dying on the wait list for cell therapies. And then beyond that, Cellares is going to apply the same high-tech approach that we're known for in the cell therapy space to other drug modalities. So if you're thinking of Cellares, really think of a high-tech next-generation biopharmaceutical manufacturing company.
We could call it a smart factory, right? This is some terminology that's been used with regards to Cellares before. Can maybe you describe what makes your whole process smart, or what differentiates a smart factory from a typical cell therapy factory?
Yeah, what we're deploying inside of our smart factories are not just our two flagship technologies, the Cell Shuttle for automated cell-therapy manufacturing and the Cell Q for automated quality control, but we're actually deploying a whole technology ecosystem. So there are dozens of software systems that are all interconnected with the custom Cell Shuttle and Cell Q software, such as our QMS, EMS, um, limb systems. So it's a whole technology ecosystem that works in a very integrated, cohesive fashion. And to make this a little bit more concrete for you, some of the things that I'm talking about is the automation, the automated generation of electronic batch records, for example. So today, when a cell therapy is manufactured manually, human operators are generating about 500 pages of paper-based batch records by hand. Imagine that. For every single patient, they're writing a whole book of quality documentation by hand on paper for every single patient. Now try and do that for 100,000 patients a year per drug. That becomes prohibitive. You just cannot. So what we're doing with the Cell Q is we're actually automating the process of doing quality control. We're automating sample prep and the analysis of all of those samples on QC instrumentation. But arguably one of the most important things that we're automating on there is we're moving the industry from paper-based batch records to electronic batch records. And we're auto-generating the content of those electronic batch records through software, as opposed to manually generating the content of those electronic batch records by hand. And that, again, helps us reduce labor. It helps us reduce cost. It helps us reduce opportunities for operator error. And this is, I guess, one of many concrete examples for how we're making our factories smart.
Now, your commercial scale facility is in Bridgewater, New Jersey. I think you're talking to us from New Jersey this morning. How does it leverage the Cell Shuttle there to produce these therapies at scale? What does it look like there inside the factory?
Yeah, so Bridgewater, New Jersey is our first commercial scale cell therapy manufacturing smart factory in the US. We currently have 5 facilities in development worldwide. So we're also building commercial scale sites in Europe and in Japan. And in each of these facilities, we're deploying about 40 cell shuttles. And each of these facilities, it depends on the length of the cell therapy process, but on average, each of these facilities can produce up to 50,000 patient doses per year. So a total of about 150,000 patient doses in capacity across all 3 facilities globally. And that is really required because a single autoimmune disease, CAR T-cell therapy, can have a patient population of up to 100,000 patients a year. So it's not where we're at today. The industry in the last years produced around 10,000 patient doses across all of the approved cell therapies per year. But it's rapidly growing, and we're looking at the first CAR T-cell therapy drugs that have patient populations that are 10 times as large, 100,000 patients per year. So really what it looks like in these smart factories that we're building out is rows and rows of cell shuttles. Each cell shuttle contains, 2 industrial robots. Cell shuttles are loaded with technology. So it's a really high-tech facility of the future where ultimately hundreds of robots are manufacturing life-saving cures for cancer in a fully automated fashion.
So maybe you can walk me through that particular workflow there. How do patient cells enter the factory? How do they get processed by the Cell Shuttle? And how do they exit so that they become a ready-to-use therapy at the other side?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the whole cell therapy manufacturing process really starts at the hospital where a blood product is collected from the patient called an apheresis. This looks a lot like getting hooked up to a dialysis machine. So the apheresis machine pre-enriches the blood a little bit. So what they're shipping to a centralized cell therapy manufacturing facility is not whole blood in most cases, but a blood product that has been enriched for white blood cells. And that gets shipped to a centralized manufacturing facility like the ones that Cellares is operating in a frozen state. The first thing that we do is we thaw the cell therapy product and begin the manufacturing process with white blood cell enrichment in the centrifuge of our cartridge to further enrich the blood product for just the white blood cells. Then we use magnetic cell sorting to subselect a particular T cell population out of the white blood cell population. That's the particular cell population that we're working with to actually generate T cell therapy. Next, we activate this T cell population. So we're adding some reagents that signal to the T cells we're under attack. We need to divide. We need to multiply. We've got a war to fight against the cancer cells. And then what we do next is we genetically engineer them. And this is the key step. The genetic engineering happens through either CRISPR or a viral vector. And it results in the T cells now expressing a new receptor on their cell surface that enables them to recognize and kill the cancer cells that before they were oblivious to. And this receptor is called a CAR, a chimeric antigen receptor. This is why they're called CAR T cells. This is the receptor that enables them to recognize and kill the cancer cells. And thereafter, we have these cells divide and multiply in the bioreactor. In the end, we go through some cell washing steps, fill, finish, formulation, and take the final drug product, formulate it into vials, freeze that down, and ship the frozen vials back to the hospital where the drug product gets infused back into the patient. And the whole process, the whole vein-to-vein time, typically takes a few weeks, depending on the particular cell therapy product. And our aim is certainly to reduce vein-to-vein time as well and make this process faster.
Well, you talked about the CAR T cells, but you're also working in areas like stem cells as well. I mean, is the smart factory, is the Cell Shuttle modular enough and flexible enough that you're able to work on different cell therapies?
Yes, the Cell Shuttle today actually can support every single CAR T cell therapy that's on the market today, out of the box, on the same hardware. And whether we make Yescarta, Tecartus, Breyanzi, Carvykti, you name them, which of these cell therapies we make on our platform is really defined in software. So one of the key innovations of the Cell Shuttle platform is its flexibility and the fact that everyone uses the same hardware, or rather we use the same hardware to manufacture a wide variety of different cell therapies that are on the market today. We're already working on the next version of the Cell Shuttle that is also going to support NK cells, T regulatory cells, hematopoietic stem cells. But we really started with both autologous and allogeneic CAR T cells and TCRs, which is what we're supporting today, because that's where most of the market is today. That's where most of the excitement is at.
One of the things you said that really differentiated you was the ability to have so much more throughput than everybody else, and to be able to push forward and do 16 at the same time that someone's doing one, to really 10x what's already out there on the market. How do you balance that sort of throughput on one side with cell therapies, which are really personal, which are just for one person? Is there a conflict there at all?
I think concept that's really helpful here is mass customization, and this is a trend that is enabled by automation that we're seeing in quite a wide variety of industries. But the Cell Shuttle and particularly the software that runs the Cell Shuttle is a prime example of mass customization, where through software-defined manufacturing, all of that complexity of the different cell manufacturing processes is really handled in software. And the hardware is flexible enough to support all of these different cell manufacturing workflows.
It's interesting that you mention other industries. One of the things that comes to mind is just how much of cell manufacturing is a manufacturing or a business problem, much like manufacturing anything else. Can you take inspiration from other industries? Are there other ways and other domains where you're able to draw from and say, we could try something like this, we can adapt from and learn from what others have done in completely different industries?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I come from the aerospace industry, and coming from aerospace into the life science tool space, it's always surprised me that there are very successful companies that have a toy on the market, that really has a very, very low level of engineering rigor. So what we're bringing over from the aerospace industry is a lot of engineering discipline And in the aerospace engineering industry, we're building some of the most complex and sophisticated technical systems that humans have ever built, such as airplanes and rockets. And yet, flying is the safest mode of transportation on Earth. How have we managed to build such a technically sophisticated and complex system, yet make it incredibly reliable? This is achieved through systems engineering. Systems engineering is a meta discipline. Systems engineers don't actually build or design anything. What they do is they organize all the other engineering disciplines into a very methodical process for product development that starts by collecting user needs. They turn user needs into requirements to then drive the architecture. So you minimize the number of dead ends you walk down. They also do a thing called design for failure modes and effects analysis, where you analyze ahead of time what could possibly go wrong here, and you design mitigation paths for failure scenarios into the design. An example of that would be uh, you're in an airliner, a flock of ducks hits your right engine goes up in flames. It's no problem because your airliner is designed to keep on flying and safely landing with the left engine only. And in much the same way, we've built mitigation paths for any kind of process failure scenarios into the Cell Shuttle. So reliability was always top of mind as we were building the Cell Shuttle. And the way we achieve this is by leaning on engineering disciplines that really come from the aerospace industry.
It's you mentioned before, you've got your manufacturing site in New Jersey. You're looking to expand now into sites in Europe, into Japan. Do the regulatory requirements for manufacturing cell therapies, do they differ across these regions? Is that something you have to deal with?
I will say by and large, the differences between the different regulatory authorities are minor. There are differences, but FDA, EMA, PMDA, they've done a really good job of harmonizing overall. And I think they're getting better at it, especially with newer drug modalities like cell therapies. I realize collaboration and standardization across the globe is really of top importance. So it's not a big challenge for us.
You mentioned the FDA. You've met with the FDA. Have they given you any particular feedback around Cell Shuttle and your closed system approach? And has that impacted your strategy?
Uh, yeah, the agency by and large is very, very supportive. Peter Marks, current director of CBER, actually has a slide in many of his presentations where he talks about cell therapies, and he shows a picture of a soda vending machine. And he says, what we need in cell therapies is a soda vending machine where you press the Pepsi button and Yescarta comes out. You press the Coca-Cola button, Carvicti comes out. You get the idea. And yeah, my point to Peter has been over the last few years. That's exactly what we've built at Cellares. That soda vending machine is called the Cell Shuttle. You press the right button, the right cell therapy product comes out fully automatically. But beyond that, we've had many interactions with the regulators early on through the FDA's CAT pathway, which is a pathway that the FDA has created to have an early dialogue with developers of advanced manufacturing technologies like Cellares. And we've received really helpful feedback from the agency on our overall approach. And by and large, we're in alignment. And the FDA has actually confirmed that what we're building is a closed system, and that because it's a closed system, we can operate in controlled and classified environments as opposed to clean rooms. And we can actually do multi-product concurrent manufacturing on the Cell Shuttle, which is a big important point, the ability to make different cell therapies for different patients on the Cell Shuttle. At this point, we're quite a few steps further along, where our interactions with the FDA are also often in collaboration with our commercial clients, with our biotech and pharma customers, to actually support the regulatory pathways of their particular cell therapy assets.
You mentioned the differences there between the FDA and so the EMA as well are minor, but are there adjustments that you're having to make when it comes to opening a facility in Europe?
Yeah, once you get into the details, there are certainly differences, but that's why we have a very large quality team and a very large regulatory team to handle all of those regulatory interactions and make sure we're in compliance with FDA standards in the US, EMA standards in Europe, and PMDA standards in Japan.
I'm just going to take you on just a final question here, Fabian. As we get to the end, where do you see Cellares in the industry itself? Do you see yourself as the leader? Do you see yourself as the only choice moving forward for others, or are there ways that you could adopt a leadership position? There are 1, 2, 3 different approaches to smart manufacturing for cell therapies, and you're one of the ones playing in that space. Where do you see the company moving forward? Sole leader, one of the big options.
I think we're going to be the dominant player in cell therapy manufacturing, and that's because today Cellares is really the only game in town that can offer 10x the scalability at about half the price compared with conventional CDMOs. And all of our technology competitors are years behind. We've got both the Cell Shuttle for automated manufacturing and the Cell Q commercial ready, cGMP compliant, and the technological capabilities of the Cell Shuttle are far beyond what anyone else has come up with to date. And within quality control, we're actually the only company that's even attempted to automate quality control for cell therapies, but it's the second half of the puzzle. It's equally important as automating manufacturing. So that said, there are huge first mover advantages in our industry. That's because pharma is inherently risk averse and pharma does not like adopting new technologies. In cell therapy, they have to, because the problem of commercial scale cell therapy manufacturing is new. It really only exists as of 2017 when Kymriah, the first FDA approved cell therapy, came on the market. Prior to that, cell therapies was an academic pursuit and everyone was running clinical trials with maybe 100 patients per clinical trial, but nobody had the problem of how do you scale up from 100 patients to 100,000 patients per year per drug. So the problem is new. It's been unsolved this far. The pain is huge because patients are dying on the wait list and pharma companies are missing out on billions of dollars of revenue and the manufacturing costs are prohibitively high. And here's Cellares, and we're offering to meet the total patient demand for cell therapies globally while reducing the price by a factor of 2. We're literally cutting it in half. That is a strongly differentiated value proposition. And the moment that we do this in the clinic, we're about a year away from being in the clinic, 2 years away from being in commercial scale manufacturing. I think the floodgates will open because put yourself into the position of a tech ops leader at a pharma company. By the time that Cellares has proven that we can do commercial scale manufacturing and do that at the scale and the price points that we're promising, I don't think anyone else is going to go with a second mover company that promises to be commercial ready and CGMP compliant 3 or 4 years later. You may have heard the saying, nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM. And there hasn't been an IBM yet over the last few years when it comes to cell therapy manufacturing. And Cellares is poised to be the IBM of cell therapy manufacturing, the proven, reliable, established choice within the next 1 or 2 years. So that's where I see the industry going. And because of that, I think we will be the de facto standard for cell therapy manufacturing 3, 4, 5 years from now.
It's an exciting journey ahead. Fabian, thanks for joining us today on Beyond Biotech.
Thank you so much.
That's it for this episode. Don't forget to check out all the latest news and analysis at Labiotech.eu. I hope wherever you are in the world, you have a great week ahead. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another Beyond Biotech.